clock struck 7 a.m., the fresh morning air filling every corner of the house. But the tranquil atmosphere was interrupted by the repetitive sound of loud punches. In a corner of the training room, Ling was busy with a punching bag that swayed with the direction of his punches. 30 minutes had passed, and Ling still hadn't stopped venting her emotions through energetic and aggressive boxing moves. Normally, Ling doesn't do much boxing. Her routine is more sedate, like yoga or jogging in the park. However, this time she felt the need to channel her anger, an irritation that had been lingering since last night, preventing her from sleeping properly. His mind continued to be filled with images that made his heart uneasy, and the punching bag in front of him became his only escape from the frustration that continued to plague him. Blow after blow was getting stronger. Sweat poured down her face and body, but Ling did not slow down her movements. Her eyes remained focused on the swaying punching bag, as if she wanted to destroy all the frustration in her mind. Last night, she witnessed something she couldn't ignore, something that raised questions in her head. Is that man Orm's boyfriend? The question swirled repeatedly in her mind, disturbing her peace. The sight of Orm and the man named Min, who seemed to get along so well last night, was something she couldn't get out of her mind. Their gaze, their light laughter, and the way they spoke to each other all made Ling's chest feel tight. If that's his girlfriend, then why do I dislike seeing Orm close to others? Ling's inner voice was getting louder and louder. She knew that this feeling shouldn't exist, but the strange feeling that suddenly arose within her felt so real that it was hard to ignore. Ling continued to hit the bag, as if to dismiss the unreasonable feelings she was feeling. She was confused with herself. Why was she so bothered by Orm's closeness to Min? Why did her heart burn whenever she thought of those moments? In fact, all this time, he had always thought of Orm only as a friend or co-worker. However, after seeing Min last night, those feelings turned into something more complicated, something he had never felt before. He didn't dare ask Orm anything last night. There was fear in the back of his mind, fear that what he was thinking might be true, afraid that the answer would only make her more uneasy. So, Ling chose to remain silent, even though in that silence, her anger and dislike continued to boil over. Now, the punching bag in front of her became the victim of her frustration. Every punch she threw felt like it represented the confusion, anger, and anxiety she was holding back. Cring, cring. The sudden ringing sound of the cell phone broke Ling's concentration, forcing her to stop what she was doing. She let out a long breath, letting the fatigue slowly seep into her body. With a slow motion, Ling paused for a moment, bowing her head as she took off the boxing gloves that had been tightly attached to her hands. The cell phone continued to ring, vibrating softly on the table near the corner of the room. Ling picked up her phone and saw that there were a lot of incoming messages on her friends' group chats. Ling opened the group chat, her fingers moving quickly, scrolling up the screen to read the conversations that seemed to have gone on for quite some time. Some voicemails also came in, but Ling just left them without listening. Although her friends' conversations seemed to have been exciting since last night, Ling felt too tired to get involved. After skimming through all the incoming conversations, Ling decided to call it a day. She felt that her energy had been drained by the emotions and boxing training she had just done. The exhaustion that crept over her body made her realize that she needed to take a break and take a shower to refresh her body. He stood in front of the mirror, looking at his reflection as he straightened his hair and clothes. Once she was sure she looked presentable, she left the room, walking slowly down the stairs. In the dining room, the appetizing aroma of cooking wafted from the kitchen, making her stomach growl even more. "Good morning," Peeling greeted Orm with a bright smile, as always. "Good morning," Ling replied flatly. Unusually, Orm's smile was unable to move Ling's face to reply. Her face remained expressionless, something Orm clearly sensed. Orm noticed the change in Ling's attitude, but he chose to keep it casual. "I've prepared breakfast for Peeling. I have to go to campus after this," Orm said lightly as he set the table. Ling stared at the food on the table, then sat down casually in her chair. "Going to college with your boyfriend?" she asked, touching her plate without looking at Orm. Orm was silent for a moment, beginning to understand the reason for Ling's change in attitude. Ever since last night, Ling had kept mentioning boyfriend, apparently referring to the incident when he was with Ming. Slowly, Orm sat down on the chair next to Ling, looking at her deeply. "Is Fi angry with me?" Orm asked, his voice full of caution. "No," Ling replied briefly. "Why should I be angry with you?" "Because of Ming last night," Orm replied cautiously, observing the change in Ling's expression that became more pronounced when he heard Ming's name. "No way. What could it be?" Ling looked at Orm, waiting for an explanation. "Perhaps Peeling is jealous of seeing me with Ming," Orm said casually, his eyes full of challenge. "Jealous?" Ling's eyes rounded. "Why would I be jealous? It doesn't make sense," she said quickly, as if trying to convince herself. "Fine," Orm muttered, leaning his body against the chair. He tore his eyes away from Ling, staring blankly ahead. "Ming and I are not dating, and never will be. We're like brothers. We're close because our fathers were friends, and my father asked Ming to look after me because he was worried I'd get bullied like I used to." Orm paused for a moment, making sure Ling was listening to his explanation. "And about last night, my car broke down, so Ming offered me a ride home," he continued. Orm glanced at Ling with the corner of his eye. "I just wanted to explain, in case Peeling wanted to know." Ling remained silent, but from the look in his eyes it was clear that he was digesting every word that came out of Orm's mouth. The atmosphere between them was still tense until Orm tried to change the conversation. "Oh yeah, did Fi get word from Kundu that P. Mikey resigned from my Sherry Moore?" Orm asked, changing the slightly stilted atmosphere. "I've known since yesterday," Ling replied, still sounding calm. "Kundu said filming will be postponed while they look for Mikey's replacement. Peeling will definitely find a suitable co-star for my Sherry Moore," said Orm with a smile. He glanced at the clock in his hand. "It's 10 o'clock. I have to go now." Ling looked up, seeing Orm already on his feet. "Your car is still in the garage, right? How are you going to get to campus?" "I've ordered a taxi online," Orm replied, leaning slightly closer to Ling's ear. "Take it easy. I'm not with Ming," he whispered with a seductive smile. Ling paused, her mouth wanting to speak, but there was nothing left. "I'll see you at 2. Peeling," Orm said cheerfully, waving goodbye before taking a small jog out of the dining hall. Ling could only stare at Orm's back as he slowly disappeared from sight. After Orm's departure, she sat back down and continued her breakfast. However, her thoughts were distracted by Orm's words earlier. There was a feeling of relief that began to seep into his heart. After hearing that explanation, unconsciously, Ling smiled a little, though she tried to keep it hidden. In a luxurious restaurant filled with elegant ambience, Ling walked in, following the instructions that had been shared in her friend's group chat. The table they were referring to was visible in the distance, and there, she could see Freen, Angfa, and Charlotte waiting for her. Lingling Sirilak Kwong, we thought you wouldn't come, Angfa greeted with a teasing smile upon seeing Ling's arrival. Right, Charlotte added with a smile. Didn't you say a few days ago that we had a rehearsal today to perform at Channel 3's birthday celebration? Ling pulled up a chair next to Freen and sat down quietly. My schedule is still at 2 in the afternoon. There's nothing wrong with me dropping by for a while, she replied calmly, though in her heart, there was a sudden feeling that she had to attend this meeting. With an ignorant smile, Freen immediately teased Ling. Since Lingling's already here, how about she pays for today's meal? Ling responded casually, without showing the slightest objection. Okay, I'll pay for today's meal. A chuckle could be heard from the table. Okay, then let's order. Freen concluded her joke, and they all began to focus on the menus in their hands. After the waiter finished recording their orders and left, the conversation that had been delayed started again. Freen broke the silence with the topic she had planned. I sent you here because I wanted to take you on a vacation to Phuket next week. Becky and I want to celebrate our anniversary there, Freen said with a hopeful smile at her 3 friends. Ling listened carefully, then sighed softly. Phuket, I don't know if I can make it or not. My schedule next week is pretty tight, she replied hesitantly. Freen, who seemed unwilling to accept rejection, quickly added, if you don't have a schedule, you should come. Think of it as a short vacation together. Just 2 days and 2 nights. It won't take too long. Charlotte, who had been silent, eagerly replied, Angfa and I will definitely come. You have to come, Ling. If necessary, take Orm with you so you won't be alone. Ling looked surprised to hear Orm's name mentioned. Invite Orm, she murmured in a doubtful tone. I don't know how to ask him. Angfa looked at Ling with a curious gaze. Just tell him you want to take him to Phuket, Angfa suggested. After all, you and Orm seem really close. Even on social media, people have started talking about how close you two are. Freen, without waiting, added, Lias, you're more at home with Orm than with me. Ling was silent for a moment, staring at the table. Her friend's words were spinning in her mind. I've only ever dated boys. I'm not sure how I feel now that Orm is also a girl, she replied softly. Freen, who was sitting next to her, let out a long sigh and looked at Ling seriously. How do you really feel about Orm? Tell us the truth. Ling was silent again. She felt her heart beating faster. I feel comfortable when I'm with Orm. Every day it feels good to have him around. Besides, Ling paused, looking hesitant to continue. Besides what? Angfa leaned forward, wanting to hear more. Ling swallowed, then continued quietly. Besides that, I feel jealous whenever I see Orm with someone else. I don't like it when people try to get close to him. I don't know what kind of feeling this is. Charlotte smiled a little at Ling's explanation. It's obvious you like Orm, but you're still hesitant because you're both girls. Freen suddenly asked in a teasing tone, Have you and Orm kissed? Charlotte, who was surprised by Freen's question, immediately interjected. How crazy is it to ask a question like that? Freen, unperturbed by Charlotte's protests, replied calmly, I'm just asking. Besides, through kissing, Sometimes we can be more sure of our own feelings. It's more powerful than just touching. Ling, who was curious about Freen's answer, finally asked, "Is that true? A kiss can make you sure of your feelings for the same sex?" Angfa nodded, adding, "Yes, it's usually a good way to find out if you like the same sex or not." "Then you should try, Ling," Freen suggested as she put her arm around her shoulders. "Try to confirm your feelings." However, Ling could only shake her head lightly. "But I can't just ask Orm out like that. I don't even know how he feels about me." Charlotte patted Ling's hand gently. "Just wait for the right moment. Don't be too hasty." Ling smiled faintly, though she still had doubts in her heart. "All right then." Their conversation was abruptly interrupted when the waiters came to serve the food they had ordered. Ling stared at the table full of dishes, realizing that as usual, her friends always ordered a lot when she was the one treating them. The Channel 3 building was filled with crowds like any other day. Fans crowded around the building, waiting expectantly to meet their favorite artists. Channel 3 is known to be home to many actors and actresses of great beauty and talent. The enthusiastic atmosphere never left the grounds of this magnificent building. Ling's car arrived on the premises, and Orm, her personal assistant, got out first. He deftly retrieved a few bags containing Ling's equipment for today's training session. Shortly after, Ling followed suit out of the car, putting on her sunglasses to protect her eyes from the scorching sun that afternoon. The stellar aura emanating from Ling caught the attention of many people around. With steady steps, Ling entered the Channel 3 building, while Orm followed behind her, carrying the bags she had earlier picked up. Some fans who had been waiting outside immediately exclaimed loudly when they saw Ling appear in front of them. However, despite their enthusiasm, the fans remained orderly, keeping their distance without approaching Ling directly. "Sawadika," a warm greeting came from Ling's lips, who waved to her fans. She smiled sweetly, making the atmosphere even more festive. Occasionally, Ling stopped to answer a few questions from her fans and politely accepted the gifts they handed over to her, with her hands getting full with the gifts she received. Ling turned to Orm, who was nearby here. She said, handing several bags of gifts to Orm, who of course was quick to take them. "Let me carry them all." "Fine," Orm said softly, feeling bad that he had brought so few compared to Ling. Ling, with a gentle smile on her face, shook her head lightly. "It's okay, I'll carry it." Ling replied in a low voice as she patted Orm's shoulder lightly, indicating that she didn't mind carrying some of the bags. The fans' reactions were inevitable when they saw the sweet interaction between Ling and Orm. Small cheers could be heard from the crowd, signaling how much they liked the closeness between the two. Although Orm was only Ling's personal assistant to the fans, Orm's presence had become an integral part of Ling's life. Norm Kasum fans started calling out Orm's name, who replied with a friendly smile and a small wave. "Did Norm open a girlfriend line?" Orm looked confused at the question. "What's a girlfriend line?" he asked, smiling a little as he didn't understand the meaning of the question. One of the fans enthusiastically explained, "The girlfriend line is a line to become Norma's girlfriend. There are many people who want to be Norma's girlfriend, so you have to wait in line first." Ling and Orm looked at each other for a moment. Then, "Yes, you can line up to be Norma's girlfriend," Orm replied in a joking tone, replying to the fans' enthusiasm. "Oui," they shouted with laughter and excitement, while Ling simply folded her arms across her chest, staring at Orm with a flat, meaningful expression. One of the fans shouted again excitedly, "Peeling, can we be Norma's girlfriend?" Ling, still in her calm demeanor, nodded slowly and replied casually, "Yes," with a faint smile. Finally, Ling waved goodbye to end the short conversation. "I'll see you later," she said kindly. She and Orm continued their steps into the building towards the training grounds. The training room was very quiet that morning. Ling arrived 30 minutes earlier than scheduled, not because she was in a hurry, but because she wanted to record a vlog to upload to her YouTube channel. It's a routine she does often, especially when she feels the need to share her daily activities with her fans. With camera in hand, Ling began filming herself. She spoke casually, telling us about her training schedule for the day, while showing us the bag she was carrying, filled with equipment such as shoes, water bottles, and more. In the corner of the room, Orm sat quietly with his iPad in hand, focused on his work. Orm deliberately chose to sit in the far corner so as not to be caught on camera, because he knew that Ling was busy with her vlog. After a few minutes, Ling had had enough of the footage. She was about to turn off her camera, but suddenly her eyes fell on Orm sitting in the corner of the room. Something caught her attention. Ling pointed the camera at Orm, recording silently without telling. "Orm?" A faint smile appeared on Ling's lips as she looked at Orm's serious face that was so immersed in his work. "Norm," called Ling in a soft tone, her smile widening as she stared at the camera screen that revealed Orm's face. Orm, who was initially unaware, raised his head and looked at Ling with a puzzled expression. After a few seconds, he realized that Ling's camera was pointed at him. "Is Peeling filming me?" asked Orm, looking at Ling with a suspicious look. Ling shook his head with a smile. "I'm not recording you," she replied evasively, but the smile on her face clearly suggested otherwise. Orm didn't give up so easily. "Peeling must be recording me," he protested as he placed his iPad on the floor and got up from his seat. He walked over to Ling with steady steps, as if he didn't want to leave it at that. Ling, who could no longer contain her laughter, tried to remain calm. "I'm not filming you," she repeated in a joking tone, but her laughter became more audible as she saw him approaching. "Peeling, don't film me," Orm grumbled as he sat next to Ling, trying to grab the camera from Ling's hand. "Give it to me. I'll delete it," he pleaded, half forcefully. Ling, still smiling, quickly hid the camera behind her body. "No way," she replied quickly. "I'll delete it after I send it to my phone," she continued. Orm did not give up. "I want to delete it now." He moved closer, trying to wrestle the camera out of Ling's hands. Ling refused, however, and their attempts to snatch the camera from each other became a laughable little game. The struggle went on for a while until Ling finally lost her balance. Her body slipped and fell to the floor, causing Orm, who was also trying to grab the camera, to fall on top of her. In an instant, their bodies were piled up on the floor, with Orm on top of Ling. The moment happened so fast. Orm's eyes widened as he realized that his lips were now pressed against Ling's. Silence fell over the training room, and time seemed to stand still. The touch lasted long enough for Orm finally came to his senses, hastily pulling himself away from Ling, his face flushed with embarrassment. With trembling hands, Orm managed to snatch the camera from Ling's hands. However, instead of deleting the footage as he said before, Orm handed the camera back to Ling. I need to go to the restroom for a moment," he said in a stammering voice, then quickly stood up and walked towards the door, leaving Ling still lying on the floor. Ling stared at Orm's departure with a puzzled expression, but remained relaxed. He sat up, adjusted his position, then said softly, "Huh? You said you wanted to delete the footage." Orm didn't answer, the door to the training room closing softly behind him. Meanwhile, in the restroom, Orm stood in front of the large mirror, staring at his own reflection with a look of confusion. His face was bright red, and his heart was beating rapidly. His hand reflexively touched his chest, feeling how fast his heart was beating, then moved to his own lips. The moment of the accidental kiss with Ling kept replaying in his mind, making him feel uneasy. On the other hand, in contrast to Orm, who looked panicked and confused, Ling looked very calm, sitting casually on the floor, staring at the camera still in her hand with a faint smile. Orm's reaction just now made Ling a little confused, but not in a negative sense. Instead, the small smile on her lips grew wider, as if she felt some form of unspoken victory. Her friends talked about how she should kiss Orm to confirm her feelings. However, without much effort, the situation made it all happen naturally, and what's more, Ling didn't have to bother doing it intentionally. Ling touched her own lips, the memory of the soft taste of Orm's lips still vivid. The kiss was brief, but it was enough to cause a lasting sensation that continues to linger. Ling took a deep breath, letting her memory drift back to that moment. There was something different about that feeling, something that she might have overlooked all this time, her feelings for Orm that had unknowingly turned into feelings of love. Orm breathed a sigh of relief as he gazed at the food he had arranged neatly on the table. After making sure that all the breakfast menus for Ling were complete, he returned to the kitchen to tidy up the cooking utensils. In the kitchen, Orm began washing the utensils while humming softly, a song that always made his morning feel warmer. Every movement of his hands while cleaning the utensils felt like a reflection of his peaceful mood. When he was done, he dried his hands with a cloth, then turned to leave the kitchen. However, as she turned around, she was surprised to see Ling standing silently behind her. "Since when has peeling been here?" asked Orm in a voice that sounded a little nervous, stammering. "Just now," Ling replied briefly, her gaze looking straight at Orm without blinking. Orm smiled stiffly, feeling awkward with Ling's sudden presence. I've prepared breakfast for peeling," he said while trying to get a hold of himself. Without waiting for a reply, he immediately walked ahead of Ling, heading for the dining table. Ling followed Orm's lead quietly, sitting on one of the chairs while watching Orm, busy preparing the food in front of him. There was something different about Orm today, Ling thought. The last 2 days, Orm, who was usually cheerful and often looked into her eyes, now looked awkward, as if he was deliberately avoiding eye contact. "Today I'm going to my parents' house, and I'll be back tomorrow," Orm said without looking at Ling, busy with the plates on the table. Ling furrowed her brows, feeling an unusual distance between them. "There's no need to rush back. My schedule doesn't start until tomorrow afternoon, right?" Ling replied without taking her eyes off Orm, trying to read his facial expression. Orm nodded slowly. "True, but I have some business to take care of before work resumes tomorrow." He stepped back as if preparing to leave. "I'll take my leave now, peeling." "Wait." Ling's voice sounded firmer as her hand grabbed Orm's wrist, halting his steps. "Why are you acting like this?" Orm looked at Ling in confusion. Like what? Like you've been avoiding me since that incident. Ling couldn't hide the serious tone in his voice, making the atmosphere between them suddenly heavy. Peeling, let's not talk about it anymore. It wasn't intentional, Orm replied quickly, his eyes darting away to avoid Ling's gaze. He could feel his face begin to heat up, flushing as images of the incident came back to his mind. Ling didn't give up. I'm not talking about it. I'm just asking, why do you seem to want to avoid me? It's just a fight feeling. I'm not avoiding. Orm's voice was soft but firm, despite his racing heart. Ling continued to stare at him, unconvinced. Is that so? Orm was about to speak again, but he was suddenly surprised when Ling pulled him up until he was sitting on Ling's lap. Ling's embrace around his waist was tight, making Orm even more nervous. Let go of me. Fi, I have to go. Now, he pleaded as he tried to pull away. I won't let you go until you speak while looking at my face. Ling said calmly but firmly, tightening her embrace even more. Tell me that you're not avoiding me. Orm took a deep breath, mustering up the courage to look Ling in the face as he normally would. Although his chest was pounding, he tried to remain calm. I'm not avoiding peeling, he said in a voice that sounded firm, despite the nervous tone behind it. Ling smiled, satisfied with Orm's answer. Good ... maybe it's just my feelings. Her gaze was soft, but the small smile on her lips couldn't hide her amusement at the sight of Orm's flushed face. But why is your face flushed like that? Huh? Orm immediately cupped his own cheeks, trying to ease the heat on his face. My face is not red, he quickly denied, though his tone of voice did not sound convincing. Peeling promised to let me go, so let me go now, he pleaded as he lightly smacked Ling's hand still around his waist. Ling laughed softly, but finally let go of his embrace. Orm quickly stood up, rushed to his room and left without a word, leaving Ling still smiling contentedly at the dining table. Orm's return home was very moving. His parents, especially Mei Koi, welcomed him with warm, longing hugs. Orm hadn't been home for almost 3 months since he started working with Ling, and his presence this time brought happiness to his family. Come in, son. Mei Koi gently took Orm by the hand, inviting him to sit on the living room sofa. May's glad you finally came to visit, she continued with a relieved smile. Orm just smiled and nodded, following his mother to the sofa. Sorry, Orm can only visit now. May, it's been busy with classes and work, he replied in a polite tone, though there was a hint of fatigue on his face. His father, sitting in the opposite seat, finally spoke up, his voice sounding stern. You didn't neglect your studies to work with that artist, did you? Orm quickly replied with a small smile, trying to calm his father's worries. No, Fu. Peeling as schedule doesn't always clash with class hours, so Orm can still manage his time. His father sighed softly, but the look in his eyes showed clear dissatisfaction. Fu, look at social media. You seem to be close to that artist. Don't forget, you already have Min as a girlfriend, he said sharply. Orm felt the tension rising within him, but he answered calmly. Orm and Peeling are just co-workers. There is no relationship beyond that. Fu, he explained in a soft tone. Despite his explanation, his father was still worried. Even if you're no longer with Min, Fu doesn't want you dating the same sex, especially with that artist. Her name is Lingling, Fu, murmured Orm, trying to set the record straight in a low voice. His father responded immediately, his voice louder this time. Whatever her name is, I would never agree to you being in a same-sex relationship. Such a relationship will not bring happiness, only misery. Orm was silent, not intending to reply to his father's words. His heart was full of mixed feelings, but he chose to remain silent. However, McCoy finally spoke up. There's nothing wrong with same-sex relationships, she said, her voice calm yet confident. Even opposite-sex relationships can bring no happiness and only misery if we choose the wrong partner. Orm's father didn't seem to completely agree, but he tempered his emotions a little. That may be true, but Fu feels that woman is not good for you. She doesn't seem to have a stand and could hurt Orm in the future. McCoy turned to her husband and said firmly, "Don't be too hard on Orm. He is an adult and can decide what is good and bad for himself. Orm has no special relationship with peeling." "Fu," Orm finally replied, his voice low and filled with emotional exhaustion. His head was bowed, as if not wanting to prolong the debate. Sensing that things were getting heated, McCoy immediately took the initiative to divert attention. "Son, you should rest first. Your journey must have been tiring, right?" Orm smiled slightly, trying to reassure his mother. "Yes, May, but Orm's not too tired." However, McCoy stood up and invited Orm to get up from the sofa. "Then let's go to the room first. You can tidy up your things." Without waiting for a reply, McCoy took Orm's hand and led him to the room, leaving his father, who was still sitting quietly with his own thoughts. A few days later, Channel 3's 54th anniversary concert finally arrived on the much-anticipated day. Since early in the morning, the actors and actresses who were the performers had arrived at the venue for rehearsal, preparing for their performance that would be watched by thousands of eyes. The concert was scheduled to start at 2 p.m., and with great enthusiasm, fans had started arriving since early morning, hoping to get the best moment to see their idols in person. One of the actresses who made an appearance at the event was Ling, who had just finished her rehearsals. Despite her busy schedule, she returned to the dressing room to tidy up. Her appearance and do her makeup before the concert started in a few hours. Preparation was important, as her performance would be one of the most anticipated. Finished with her makeup, Ling turned to Orm, who was talking to the rest of the crew. In a low voice, Ling asked, "How do I look?" Orm immediately turned his gaze to Ling. Smiling, he complimented, "Peeling is very beautiful." Then, without hesitation, he moved closer to tidy up Ling's slightly messy hair. "Let me tidy it up a bit," he said with great care. Ling, who witnessed Orm's warm actions, smiled softly as she watched Orm's face meaningfully. "Orm," she called in a softer tone of voice than usual. "Yes, peeling," replied Orm as he continued to smooth Ling's hair. "On Friday, my friend is taking me on a vacation to Phuket until Sunday." Ling spoke softly, momentarily pausing her words before continuing. "And I want to take you there." "Phuket?" Orm frowned, a little surprised at the invitation. "It's Peeling's event with her 5 friends. Why would you want to take me?" Ling smiled slightly. "I don't know. Maybe because you're my friend too," she replied lightly, but there was something more in her words. Orm looked doubtful for a moment, then asked in a low voice, "Can I have some time to think, Phi?" Ling nodded gently. "Sure, I'll give you some time, but not for long, okay?" Orm smiled slightly. It won't take long. I'll give you an answer as soon as I can. Ling then held Orm's hand, who was still busy tidying up his hair. Her gaze shifted from the mirror straight into Orm's eyes. I'll wait for him, she said meaningfully. Several hours passed, and Channel 3's 54th anniversary concert was finally over. The event closed with a group photo session between all the performers and the fans present. Cheers and applause filled the atmosphere, marking the end of a moment full of excitement. After the photo session, the performers were directed backstage to rest and prepare to return to their respective waiting rooms. Ling, one of the main stars of the evening, finally breathed a sigh of relief. She sat down for a moment, feeling a sense of relief after making it through a challenging performance. As an actress, Ling rarely performed singing and dancing except on important occasions, such as this big concert, which must have drained her energy. After being on stage for so long, her body felt tired, but her little heart felt satisfied that she had given her best. After changing, Ling walked over to Orm, who was busy tidying up the items in the waiting room. Orm was meticulous, making sure each of Ling's belongings were neatly put into a bag before they went home. Are you done? Asked Ling, looking at Orm, who was still busy. Orm lifted his face and smiled. Just a bit more, Fi, he replied as he continued his work. Ling felt bad just standing and watching. I'll help you, he offered, approaching and preparing to help put the items into the bag. However, Orm quickly restrained Ling's hand. Don't, Peeling, he said gently. Fi, just rest. It's my job after all. Ling shook her head slowly, still wanting to help. I'm helping you so we can finish sooner and go home, she said with a small smile, unwilling to give up. Orm politely declined again. No need, Peeling. Let me do it. You just sit down. Just as Ling was about to continue helping, a voice was heard calling her name. Kun Ling. Ling turned her head and saw Kandu, a famous producer, standing nearby. Ling greeted back politely. Kandu, what's wrong? She asked, curious. Can you come with me for a moment? I have something to talk about, Kandu said in a serious tone, but still with a friendly smile. Ling nodded, stopping what she was doing. Yes, Kandu, she replied and followed the producer to a special room at the back of the stage. Backstage, once inside the room, Kandu smiled at Ling, who looked a little tense. Why does your face look so tense? He asked. Kandu in a teasing tone. Ling smiled slightly, still a little worried. Because of talking to Kandu, I thought there was something serious to talk about, she replied in a low voice. Kandu chuckled. Don't worry, it's nothing too serious, he said casually. I just want to talk about the replacement actor who will be your partner in the drama. My chérie amour. Ling looked interested. Has Kandu found a replacement yet? She asked curiously. Kandu nodded. Already, Min will be the replacement and be your partner in the drama. Hearing Min's name, Ling paused for a moment. Her thoughts and memories swirled, recalling the past with Min, who had once been an important part of her life. Ling lowered her gaze, trying to hide her mixed feelings. I think Min is the most suitable person for this role. Besides, Min wouldn't mind being paired with you either. What do you think? Asked Kandu, observing Ling's expression. Ling was silent for a while before finally asking softly, other than Min, are there any other candidates who could be my partner in my chérie amour? Kandu nodded slowly, actually. There are some other candidates, but we have to go through the selection process again. That will take more time, while we already have to start filming. The drama is also set to air by the end of the year, as originally planned. Ling bit her lip, seemingly hesitant to give an answer. She knew very well that this was an important opportunity, but involving Min in this project made her hesitate. Seeing the hesitation on Ling's face, Kandu put his hand on Ling's shoulder and said gently, "Fi knows Min is your ex, but you guys broke up well, right? There are no problems between you guys. Fi hopes you can work together with Min. Just for my sharing more like a professional actress." After a moment of thought, considering all possibilities, Ling finally nodded slowly. "Yes, I agreed to work with Kunmin," she replied in a voice that sounded more steady. Despite the slight hesitation in her heart, Ling knew that professionalism had to come first, especially since Kandu was a producer she respected. "Very good," Kandu said with a relieved smile. "I will immediately rearrange the schedule for my Sherry Amour's fittings and filming preparations." Ling smiled slightly, though inwardly there was still a sense of uncertainty. "Yes, I'll wait for him." "Peeling, what would you like for dinner?" asked Orm as he drove, occasionally glancing at Ling next to him. However, after a while of waiting, no answer came out of Ling's mouth. Only silence accompanied their journey. Orm, who was getting worried, glanced at Ling a little longer, trying to read her mood. "Is Peeling alright?" Orm asked again, his voice softer this time. Realizing that Ling had been silent and giving uncharacteristically short responses, Ling finally turned her gaze towards Orm, her eyes showing deep emotional exhaustion. "Kandu talked to Fi earlier," Ling said softly, her voice heavy. "He said Min will be Fi's partner in my Sherry Amour." Orm was silent for a moment, absorbing the information. "So, what did Peeling say about that?" he asked cautiously. Ling let out a long breath, as if all the weight was heavier on her chest. "I couldn't refuse him. I had to accept Min as my partner in the series," Ling replied, her voice sounding desperate. Her face showed a deep doubt. Actually, she was tired of not wanting to see Min, but Ling didn't have much choice. The responsibility of professionalism as an actress made her swallow the bitterness of the situation. "Although Pimian has heard Peeling," Orm said in a soft yet supportive voice, "I'm sure as a professional actress, Fi can act well with him." Ling lowered her head, shaking her head slowly. "But for some reason I still have my doubts. I still remember the way he hurt me," Ling said, her eyes teary, remembering the old wounds Min had inflicted on her heart. Orm, without saying much more, pulled the car over on the side of the road. He turned off the engine and reached for Ling's hand, grasping it gently yet firmly, providing the warmth Ling needed right now. "That's just the past, Peeling," Orm said in a calm, soothing tone. The wound Peeling received back then was one of the paths for Peeling to find happiness in the future. It does not define who Peeling is now. Ling gazed at Orm's hand clasping hers, feeling a sincerity permeating through the touch. A faint smile appeared on her lips. Her fingers gently rubbed Orm's hand that was still clasped tightly. "Thank you for making me feel a little better, Norm." Orm smiled warmly, but remained modest. "No need to thank you, Fi. It's what I'm supposed to do." They were both silent for a moment, savoring the moment of peaceful silence. Then Orm suddenly said in a more cheerful tone, as if to change the mood, "I know what can make Peeling feel better again." Ling raised an eyebrow, intrigued by Orm's statement. "What is it?" she asked, curious. "I've agreed to come with Peeling to Phuket," Orm replied with a wide smile. "Once we get home, I'll organize the schedule and clear all the plans. We can go together." Ling's face, which had been looking grim, brightened up. A big smile appeared on her face, replacing all the sadness that had dominated earlier. "Thank you. You really know how to make me feel better." Ling looked at Orm with a meaningful gaze. Before continuing softly, "You're right. That wound has now brought happiness, and I found that happiness in you." Orm was stunned, not expecting Ling's words. "Huh?" Ling smiled a little embarrassed. "It's nothing," she said as she released her hand from Orm's. Leaning back on the car seat, "Let's go home. I'm tired and want to rest." Orm was still a little confused about what Ling meant, but he decided not to prolong it. Calmly, he started the car again and began to drive on. Even so, his mind was still thinking about Ling's words. To Orm, Ling was an unpredictable figure. Every word Ling said seemed to be full of riddles that were hard to understand. And sometimes he felt like there was a deeper meaning behind those words.